Welcome to the Creepin' It Real Show, your one-stop shop for weird news, spooky, and otherworldly and paranormal shenanigans. We'll take a dive into what's going on in creepy pop culture. You can follow Creepin' It Real Show on Twitter at creepin_it. You can email us at creepinitrealshow@gmail.com. You can also go to our website, creepinitrealshow.com. Without further ado, welcome to this week's episode.
Hello, creepers. Just real quick, we want to remind you to find and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/creepinitreal. That's a big community over there. We have a lot of fun. Follow us on Twitter at creepin_it and on Instagram at the Creepin' It Real Show. And without further ado, I want to bring in one of my brilliant co-hosts, Mr. Yardley. How's it going?
Hey, I'm doing good. We finally moved past that little cold spell that we had, and the last couple of days have been pretty decent. It's Super Bowl Sunday, a little wet, but can't complain.
Hey, you guys passed some of that cold over here. I mean, relative, but still, we've had a ton of rain, flash flood warnings, all of it, and actually had to have the dogs inside. It's been crazy over here. And what about you, Miss Christy? What's going on?
Oh, busy. Doing very well. I had to work the Super Bowl experience this week and gave out free grilled cheese and met a bunch of athletes and lots of people, lots of kids, had a good time. I will tell a really embarrassing story really quick because this just gives you an idea of how old I'm getting and how I need to now compensate and do things a little differently. I got up yesterday morning to take my class on the commercial drone pilot's license that I need to get.
That's so awesome.
I'm very excited about it. Got up, got ready, packed up my bag, packed up my computer, got to the hotel for the class, and it's not till next Saturday. I had scheduled on my calendar the wrong day because I can't fucking see anything. So I screenshotted when I signed up. I just did a screenshot on my phone. And I read the 9. I don't know how I did this, but I read the 9 as a 2. And then I put it on all my calendars as February 2nd instead of February 9th. So I'm an idiot. And now I'm like, okay, I'll wear my glasses. Fine. So now I'm going to be an old lady forever that can't see, which is what happens apparently when you get into your 40s. So I got up at 6:30 a.m. to get ready for a fucking class. That wasn't until next week. So otherwise, I'm doing great. Just very busy.
Well, my brain is always on toddlers, so it's like a drug, except for it makes you dumber. So I definitely could have made the same mistake. And as to the glasses, I swear I have some reading glasses that I'm supposed to use just when I have like migraines, basically. But I was like we went to that librarian convention in Seattle last week, and I was like the only female librarian not wearing glasses, and I felt totally left out. So I guess it just depends on your audience.
I guess so.
Anyways, Mr. Yardley, scary story.
Was published during the 1980s, written and adapted from folklore by Alvin Schwartz and illustrated by Stephen Gamel. The film follows a group of young teens who must solve the mystery surrounding the sudden and macabre deaths in their small town. The movie will be directed by Andre Oradal, who did The Autopsy of Jane Doe and Troll Hunter. Both of those are on Netflix, and is co-written by Daniel and Kevin Hageman, along with Del Toro, who provided the screenplay. So Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark will open on August 9th, 2019. And I saw this posted through the CBS Twitter account, and there are quite a few people who are actually excited about this, even though I have not read those, and I wasn't really familiar with the stories in particular, but I did know that picture of Harold because I've always seen it around, and I never necessarily knew where it was from. And then as I did some research, when I was checking the link from CBS, I was like, oh, okay, so this is where this image is from. So you were saying, Moni, that your husband was familiar with this. Are you familiar with it as well?
Yeah, I've read them, and they're still really, really popular with kids. I'm kind of curious what the horror really can be amped up to with these, because they are targeted to like young teens, and you're saying that it's a group of teens that are gonna, but on the other hand, the whole thing is based in folklore, and some of the folklores are, they're scary as shit. So the illustrations are creepy, the stories are definitely creepy even as an adult. Christy and I read a couple of them for one of our drunken horror stories, and they still kind of get you a little bit, kind of because they're so open-ended too, they just kind of leave you wondering. But a real quick funny story about Guillermo del Toro. He's a brony. He came into my friend's comic book shop and was buying My Little Pony stuff for his niece. But anyway,
quote unquote.
Yes, exactly. But he was super, super nice, I guess, and spent a lot of time talking to everybody there. Miss Christy, what about a grenade?
Oh, good times. So say you're making yourself a nice baked potato and you pull a grenade out of the bag instead of a potato.
I hate it when that happens.
Thankfully, though, this did not happen, and the actual potato chip factory discovered it instead. A shipment of imported potatoes from France showed up over and Hong Kong at this factory, and they were sorting them all, getting ready, to make potato chips. And one of them ended up, instead of being a potato caked with mud and dirt, was actually an old German-made grenade from World War I. They actually have it on Twitter showing them detonating it, the Hong Kong police force. We detonated a German-made World War I hand grenade earlier this afternoon. They use like a high-pressured water hose thing, and detonated it like in the street. So interesting. It even made CNN International, and you can see a picture of the grenade. It does actually, I could totally see why they thought this was a potato. If you're in the fields and you're digging shit up and you're like, yep, that's a potato, all right. And you just throw it in a bag.
Doesn't it feel heavier though, or like different in your hand? I don't know.
Yeah, you would think so, but it's kind of funny that you had brought up this story, because 6 days ago in Tampa, a man found a World War II grenade while he was fishing, and he ended up bringing it to a local Taco Bell.
And then, Taco Bell.
Of course, the cops. Yeah, so he brings it into the Taco Bell apparently, and then they ended up calling the police, and a bomb squad came. But they did confirm that it was an authentic World War II hand grenade, and they ended up removing it without incident. And that Taco Bell has, of course, it's reopened now. But it's just kind of funny, because I was like, man, I just read a story kind of similar.
Why would you take it to a Taco Bell? That is so weird.
Yeah, I
hey
don't
guys,
know,
look what I found. Can I get a burrito?
You bring it to the library,
That was probably what happened. He was trying to show it off or whatever.
Oh my gosh. So Taco Bell is the place you want to show off your World War II findings. I got it. Yeah, that's a close call though. I mean, clearly if they detonated it, it was still like detonatable. I mean, I don't know how long, grenades last. It's been sitting in a field covered with dirt. I just how long is the shelf life on those things is my question, but I never looked it up. I just throw those questions to the wind.
Grey's Anatomy, because apparently they find detonating devices inside of human bodies all the time.
Of course they do.
At least they have really cheesy music going on while it happens.
Exactly.
Speaking of Grey's Anatomy, which takes place in Seattle, where I was last week, as I mentioned, I had a ghost experience. So we did a ghost tour, and I'm going to pull it up right now. I probably should have had it. It's Spooked in Seattle, and they are pretty awesome. They have everything thought out, because the area gets really loud where they take you. So they have a microphone, and the stories are engaging. And oh my gosh, the real life history and the hauntings in the Pioneer Square area of Seattle are pretty legit. And at one point, we were actually in a pub that they have a good relationship with, and this pub kind of goes underground. And they were talking about some of the people that had died there, and then also some of the negative experiences with spirits that didn't seem very nice. And apparently at this pub, and I don't have the name of it, ghost experiences are common. Like for the staff, it just happens. But there also is a lot of there's a lot of negative, they've actually asked, is everybody here nice, and gotten answers, that not all the spirits there are very friendly. And as she's telling that part of the story, our tour guide, I'm sitting in a chair, and the chair vibrates. And I'm like, okay, we're underground. This is a business. There's people, there's traffic outside. Like it's just vibrations in the floor. But it really felt specific to one corner of my chair, like right at the moment that she said, not all the spirits are nice. And it kind of went on for a second. I was like, that's weird. And nobody else seemed to react to anything. So I waited and asked the tour guide later. And I said, so there's another room like underneath where we were sitting. And she's like, what are you talking about? And so, I explained to her what had happened, and, it definitely felt like something pulled. She said there was nothing underneath, and it definitely felt like something had pulled on my chair. So that was kind of weird, but I still feel like it was pretty explainable. So at a certain point, we're actually underground in this area where a lot of people have died, and they turn off all the lights, and part of that's for effect, and they have spooky mummies down there and all kinds of cool stuff. But as she's telling another story, my friend comes up, and Christy, tell me if you know this move. Guys, like when they want to talk to you and they don't want everyone else to hear, they kind of put their hand on your back, right? And they kind of whisper.
And they kind of lean into your ear. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. And you know exactly what that feels like. My dad does it. My husband does it. My friends do it, like whatever. And so my buddy Dan comes up and puts his hand on my back, and he starts to tell me something. And I go to turn so I can hear him better because, we're in the middle of this tour, and I'm like being a little rude, making sure not everybody can overhear us. Dan is 10 feet to the left, and this was up on my right-hand side. And moreover, as I'm noticing that, the whispering continued, the hand stayed, and so next thing you know, everybody in the group sees me like slapping at something on my back.
Oh, man.
And I think I yelled like, stop it, fuck off. Like, well, one of the spirits in that area is known for flirting with ladies. And, that hand on the small of the back, it can be someone familiar to you, but it also can be somebody who's trying to like come in and flirt with you. So once I realized it wasn't my friend or anybody else who was anywhere nearby, I'm pretty sure it was the guy that likes to talk to women.
Hello. So he's asking you, can I buy you a fifth sandwich?
Yeah. And he kept whispering. They're like, what did he say? I was like, I was just telling him to fuck off to know what he was saying. I have no idea. So that happened, and that shook me because I'm used to sort of having experiences, but knowing, like, kind of having an energy feel, what I'm getting into. And this whole place felt creepy just because of how they had designed it. No, that made me, I was like kind of shook for a few more minutes. I was literally just like, what the fuck just happened? So at any rate, I wanted to move forward and talk about some of the things that we are watching, listening to, reading in our pop culture space. Yardley mentioned what's coming up. You know that today, actually, we're recording on Super Bowl Sunday. Unfortunately, this won't be out until after the Super Bowl, but there's going to be a couple of horror movie trailers that are rumored to have their first commercials aired during the Super Bowl. One of them is Brightburn, which is a James Gunn superhero. Yay, they gave him another movie. He got shafted, in my opinion. And then there's a Jordan Peele horror movie. That was what were they originally calling it? Do you guys remember? We talked about it. It was like This Is Us or something, and then they changed the title.
Well, it was just Us, as far as I knew. But what did they change the title?
They had it This Is Us, and then there's that TV show, I think, and they sort of had to move away from that same title. Okay, so the first Us trailer, which already is available online, and I can share it, but it's only 30 seconds, is going to air during the Super Bowl. So I don't know. Do you guys feel like we as horror fans have really kind of made it because now we're getting like horror things advertised during the Super Bowl?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're a thing now. They can't ignore us anymore.
No. But I was also hearing that there are going to be a lot less movie trailers than before. They're going to be during the Super Bowl. I think a lot of people are starting to, move away because, the ad time, of course, is crazy expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not saying that these movie studios don't have the money, but at the same time, you still get the reach, if not more reach, by just dropping it online, which you do anyway, you know what I mean, nowadays. So I'll be curious to see what they do. Now, you're saying that this Us preview is only going to be a 30-second TV spot?
Well, the one that's online right now is 30 seconds, and I'm wondering if also because of the expense that you were mentioning, if maybe they will only have, but I'm hoping we'll get an extra long preview because I'm going to be watching anyways. Might as well see something exciting. Not
exactly.
That
this game that's going to suck, so I'm just really in it for the food and the commercials because I don't really care about either one of these teams, to be honest with you.
Yeah. for sure. I'm just going to be yelling if the Patriots win is basically going to be, I'm going to be mad. Like I'm going to be against them the whole time. So there you go.
Well, if Fiona the Hippo is right again this year, they will lose. So, and
Good.
Fiona has guessed it right for the last couple of years.
You know how it is on these parts. Like today is the Atlanta Rams. Go.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Which, while I was working the NFL experience, and this is the actual God honest truth, I did not see one Rams jersey in that entire place that I saw. I did not see one. So I'm like, where are all of them? They were like so shocked that they were going to the Super Bowl. They were like, I don't know, we're going to get there.
I saw a pack of them because, I'm over here by Atlantic Station. So all of that stuff, like Atlantic Station is like a stronghold because, they have all the NFL experience. Then they have all those concerts and things like that going. Mm-hmm. So you see a lot more of that, on this side. Yeah. But I did see some Rams fans. I saw a few Patriots fans. As the foot traffic, has really gone up. But everything, like basically what Atlanta's done is they've pushed a lot of people into certain areas that are easier to secure. Mm-hmm. So I kind of get it why you haven't, because, a lot of the stuff is all going on here within 2 or 3 miles of the stadium. So. Yeah.
I did see one family who were I was on the MARTA train going home because you certainly don't want to fucking drive down there. It was insane. And they had just gotten out of the airport and were trying to find their hotel, and they were on the MARTA, so I was helping them. I'm like, I'll help you guys because you're Rams fans, but if you were Patriots fans, I'd be like, no habla English.
Yeah.
But before we move on, I do have to admit I can appreciate that, look, if they win another title, that's a big deal, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just, it's a big deal. I think that would be 6 for them or something like that. So, the accomplishment in itself, I can acknowledge that we'll never see another team go to 10 straight Super Bowls or something like that. I just don't see it. But anyway, I'm still rooting against them. I don't want the team that beat Atlanta in the Super Bowl to win a Super Bowl in Atlanta.
I don't like the owner, and I don't like Tom Brady. I don't like any of it. I don't like them. So I just don't like it. And I don't like their uniforms. I don't like their outfits.
People are like, they need to get off our lawn. We don't like them.
I'm like, get out of my town. Go back up north and freeze your balls off. Like, I don't want you down here.
Freeze your deflated balls off.
Just Google perfect. Robert Kraft dancing with Cardi B because there's video of that happening. Yeah.
Oh, barf.
I love her so much, but that was so awkward.
I adore her, and that makes me angry. Thinking about it. I can't stand him. Oh, he's just such a
should have just leg swept him right off the stage or whatever.
Him and who's the owner of the Cowboys? Something Jones. Jerry Jones. God, I can't stand him either. Ugh. Both of them are just assholes.
We've let the football totally derail the show.
Sorry,
I was gonna say on that note.
I just had to get that out there. I don't like them, I'm sure, and I don't begrudge any fan that does. I just personally I'm not that into football for it to ruin my life.
Why are you so wrong?
Yeah, but I'm like, I just personally don't like them at all, ever.
And okay.
So moving on.
On that note, I do have a question for you guys back to a topic related to the show, which is I Am the Night. We had that Black Dahlia episode. A lot of our fans, that got some good feedback. So thank you, creepers, for listening. My question first question, has either one of you guys actually seen I Am the Night?
No.
I have not.
Okay. So the reason I'm asking is because I want to know why. Tell me, is it because it's on TBS or TNT? I don't even fucking know. Or is it because it's something you're not interested in? Is it the marketing? Tell me why you haven't watched it.
I don't have TBS.
Okay.
I don't even know what the hell it is.
Okay, see, that's my point. Okay, so here's the thing. It stars Chris Pine, and he's hot, and so you would think that alone would bring some kind of following. And also, it's on a network that's not really known for, its major dramas or horrors or whatever, so that's kind of weird. And I think the third thing that it suffered from was a marketing issue because the story that it tells, it isn't even the Black Dahlia story, that's from the fucking 40s, y'all. I have an interest in it as a true crime person, and I know true crime is hot right now, but it's not even about the actual Black Dahlia. It's some like tangential sort of related story, and it's hard to explain how that's related, and they didn't really cut it with their commercials. I'm just curious because I did see an article that was reviewing it, and I enjoyed it. I'm going to keep watching it. The next episode airs tomorrow. And the thing with me though is this article was saying, oh, the golden age of movie stars is over. They're taking all these crap TV jobs for paychecks, and nobody wants to follow like Chris Pine or a big movie star over to television.
Oh, that's not true. That's not true. I don't agree with that at all because, I mean, if anything, I think these days TV and movie is almost becoming blurred together because the quality of shows and movies on TV is becoming just as good as stuff you would see in a theater. So I completely disagree with that.
Yeah. Who knows what the draw is? I mean, also, with Netflix and things like this, with Netflix having stuff that's that's getting nominated for Oscars, I do like the avenue of, more, movie stars, so to speak, going to TV and going to things like network. I think that there is a draw for that. However, Chris Pine, and I like him. He's a great actor. Most of the stuff that I've seen him in, I have enjoyed, but he's not an A-list actor. He's still a B-list, type of actor. So I don't know how much.
Hottie, though, I gotta say.
I don't necessarily know what the. I don't know. I agree with you on maybe the marketing or advertising for it might not have been, what it should have been, but I don't know. I'll take your word for it. And if it's good, I'll definitely check it out.
Amazon Prime advertises it, so I'm imagining they have some kind of way that you could like do a week trial of the app for it or something like that for free. It's like I said, there's only one episode so far. There's another one coming up. It's interesting. It's not cheaply done. I do think like we said, it suffers from the marketing. I think it suffers from the network that it's on. Not everybody has it. So we'll see how it pans out. I was planning to do a review for the second episode, but then I just realized it airs tomorrow, so that doesn't help me.
Well, Christy, is because TBS is here.
Yeah.
So is there a way to watch it if you just have a digital antenna? Like I do everything through my Apple TV, so I don't really do the local thing except through my digital. Yeah. Do you know what channel that would be if you didn't have?
I have the Dish. I do not know. And we only have the Dish because they basically begged us not to leave and gave us such a cheap monthly fee that we were like, okay, $30 a month. Oh, okay. We were paying like $150. Yeah. So honestly, we were getting ready to do what you do, Yardley, and go just full on digital, get the Roku, the Apple TV, and all that shit.
That's where I'm at. Yep.
And so I have no idea. Honest to God, the reason why I don't know about this is because I don't watch regular TV. I have shit I record, and I watch those recordings, but rarely do I just like go and find shows. Like you have to tell me, which is one of the reasons why I love doing this show, what the hell to watch. Because otherwise,
the only reason I found it was when I was doing all this Black Dahlia research. I was watching YouTube videos, and you know how it steals whatever you've been searching for, and it popped up with this. And I still, even watching it, I was like, how the hell is this related to the Black Dahlia? It's so like tangentially, like it's about the guy that might have killed her, about his maybe daughter/granddaughter. Like, I don't know. It's really fucking weird, but it looked well done. It's not cheaply made. So I'm going to keep watching it just for like the true crime element to it. I think it's really glamorous.
I'll look it up and record it with all the rest of my shit. Like I did.
It has that Los Feliz house that I actually went to in LA.
Okay.
And it still looks the same, but I never obviously got to go inside of it. And so they show kind of the inside and all the parties. That house is a central, core to the show. So I was like, I gotta watch this just because I've been there recently. So captured my attention, but I could totally see why it doesn't capture anyone's. And I don't think that has anything to do with, big movie stars cheapening television or whatever.
Not at all. That's silly.
So, Christy, have you watched Abducted in Plain Sight?
Oh, God, I watched all of it. I couldn't turn away.
This is on Netflix, y'all. Abducted in Plain Sight.
God, it was just, okay, so full disclosure, when I was a child, I was molested by somebody that my family knew, and I just sit there and watch this, and I never told my parents, and they certainly wasn't as in their face as what this. And honest to God, love them, love these kids love this child for not having any issues with her parents today. I think she's right. They have beaten themselves up enough, but holy shit, that was one of the most painful series I have ever watched. And not just because of my past. It was just like horrifying. Oh, God. I mean, and not
Do you want to explain to the listeners a little bit about it?
Yeah, so this was way back in the early 80s, late 70s, which is right around our ages. Not you, Moni, but anybody who's in their 40s, really, really similar era as, when you see the photos and stuff that they share. It's like, wow, I think I actually had one of those nightgowns. But, and they were involved with the church, and this new family moves into town and befriends them, and they have a ton of kids. I think they said they had like 5 kids, the new family. Anyway, so the dad of the family starts showing really close interest with their family as a whole, and especially one of the girls in the family. There was, I think, they had 3 girls. And of course, later you find out that he is a pedophile and takes her, this is the craziest shit ever. Drugs her and puts a speaker by her head. They're in a camper, and makes her think that she's been abducted by aliens.
Yeah.
And that he was abducted too. And to save the human race, they have to make a baby. And she's like 13.
He can't just rape her. He has to actually make a thing of it.
Right. He doesn't want to be a bad guy to her because she loves him, because she grew up, she's loves the guy. He's like another father to her. And so he has these recordings recorded of his voice, but in a weird, distorted, alien voice.
Scare the shit out of her even more. Yeah.
And threatens to kill her family if she doesn't procreate with this guy. This neighbor, their friend of the family that she basically considered another dad. And they're I believe they were in Mexico. Anyway, I don't want to tell the whole story, but it's so fucked up. And he abducted her twice, 2 times. And the family, I don't know, if my kid left home, I would be beating down every road.
I would have
knock
gone
on every fucking
and killed
door.
everyone that ever had talked to that guy. I swear to God.
I don't understand how they were just kind of waiting for months and months for her to call. And she would call, and he had ended up putting her in a girl's home and hid her with a fake name somewhere. It's the most.
Remember he tried to force them to let them get married?
Yeah. Oh, he said the only way.
He's I won't bring her back ever unless you let us get married. So that what I'm doing to her is legal. Basically, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. The first time he abducted her, while he was in Mexico, he said that he would only bring her back if they could get married. He told the parents that.
See, that's when you need Liam Neeson to just go fucking get her back.
The thing is when they get back. And he comes back, and I don't remember if he even did much prison time, but he goes back into the church and into their lives, and he comes to them and says that he's in therapy, and the only way that he can get better is if he sleeps with her, and they let him.
Yeah, that's
sleeps in the bed with her to help his.
No.
I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? I would get a second opinion.
I would kill him with my bare fucking hands.
Jesus
As a parent,
Christ.
I just would have been like, oh, you want to sleep with my daughter? Come on in. And then I would put him in a chokehold, and I would squeeze until his fucking neck broke.
And then it's revealed that both parents are also having an affair with him.
Yeah.
The dad, it was a couple of times, but the mom ends up leaving her family to be with him for a while. I'm just like, are you people insane? I cannot. God bless that girl. I don't want to look. She's been through enough, and I hope she never hears me ranting and raving about all this. But I really do give her an insane amount of props for forgiving her parents and having relationships with them. That is bigger. She's bigger than me. I'll tell you that right now. That's all I can say. I was just shocked.
Sure.
And that's not even all of it. It was just what a fucking crazy. They do say the truth is stranger than fiction. I'll tell you that. That is the truth, girl.
Yeah, and I recommend you watch it. Just know, like, if you're into true crime and weird stories, obviously, if you're listening to this show, but just know that it is pretty triggery. I was watching it with a friend, and there was a point where she's describing being raped, but like what she was focusing on, what she was looking at while it was happening. And, you know, having lived that moment in my own life, I'm good on hearing other people's stories about it. Good on her. I'm glad she was brave enough to tell it. Whatever. But I kind of like, I'm going to take a break from this for a bit and have not found myself going back to it. I get the gist of the story. It's crazy. It's interesting, and I'm over it. So in the interest of making sure that we have time to talk about our sports here today, the history and the brutality of sports as we know them today, I'm going to go ahead and forego talking about the Ted Bundy documentary. However, watch that if you get a chance.
It was good.
A little dry, but it's very interesting.
I had no idea that all that happened. I knew that he was a serial killer. I just didn't know as much details.
His mother almost aborted him, and I'm sorry, I'm not saying I'm pro-abortion or anti-anything, but in his case, how much better would the world be if all those people weren't dead because his mother had just chosen not to have his ass? Like, come on.
Anyway. And I did not know that he escaped. I knew he escaped, but I didn't know how long he was in Florida. And that they arrested him, and he wouldn't tell them who he was, and they didn't know who he was. Like one of the worst serial killers of the decade. They're holding on to, and the judge is like, "I'm not letting you out until you tell me what your name is." And he wouldn't tell him his name, and he even had a prosecutor or a defender. The court-appointed attorney defending him and going, "Yeah, but he's only done this." The guy's like, "But we don't know who the hell he is." And then they finally find out who he is. I was like, holy shit. I had you could only do that back then. You certainly can't do that today with the internets. But anyway, it was good.
So
Sorry. Just definitely worth watching. It was fascinating.
I'm excited to see the movie version, though, where it'll be a little bit hopefully more factual, but a little more sped up as far as pacing. That'll be nice.
Yeah.
At any rate, though, so as you may already know, Super Bowl, American football we're talking about. I know they call it football and it's soccer in other places, but American football is rooted in a brutal history. Sports in general have a lot of violence involved in them. And most of this information comes from Discovery, and some of it comes from a well-researched Wikipedia article. So, Christy, tell us about gladiator combat.
In what might be the most well-known spectator sport of the Roman era, gladiator combat pitted armed men, typically slaves and criminals, against each other, as well as wild beasts, including lions, bears, and more. Although injuries and fatalities are common with this kind of blood sport, gladiators could earn substantial sums through victory. Games featuring gladiators were hosted not only for ritual purposes, such as religious celebrations or funerals, but also as a means for the rich to show off their power. Around the 4th century, the increased need to protect the empire from outside invaders, as well as the rising influence of Christianity, led to a decline and the eventual disappearance of the sport entirely.
Can you imagine showing off your wealth just by I'm going to have someone fight in my honor and he shall die and it will be all good because I'm rich.
Exactly. Throw a lion in there. Let's see what happens.
Now, speaking of lions, I never knew that there was a name for this. So it's called venatio. So similar to gladiator combat, venatio was a sport that pitted armed men against wild and often exotic animals. The matches were hardly even. In a single day, thousands of animals could be slaughtered by only a handful of hunters. In fact, although lions, tigers, bears, and elephants were included in the event, non-aggressive creatures such as rabbits and deer were also included in the games.
Real tough men. Woo, let's kill a rabbit.
Anything that you could stomp out probably shouldn't be in the terror dome, fighting. But on the other side of the coin, animals were often also used to inflict punishment. A common execution of criminals and most famous Christians often involve mauling by a large beast like a lion or a bear.
Jesus. Polo. Although today polo is synonymous with high society, and a polo player on horseback can even become a symbol of a popular fashion brand. But when polo was first played by Persians starting in the 5th century, it was anything but a civilized game. Originally, toughened cavalries played the sport to hone their horseback battle skills. Eventually, Iranian nobility picked up on the activity, and the game has been identified with upper class leisure ever since.
Oh, Mayan racquetball. I can't wait to hear about this. These days, racquetball is a fairly genteel sport. Like polo, it is also associated with a refined rather than purely physical athlete. But early forms of the sport were much more violent. Consider the sport played by indigenous tribes, including the Maya and the Inca, throughout ancient Central and South America. Although the exact rules of the game are a mystery, courts and rubber balls left behind these tribes reveal what the sport entailed. Like the ancient sport of polo, this ball game simulated battle, but ancient Mesoamerican tribes took it one step further. With games involving religious rituals, losers wouldn't simply shake hands and go home. They would be sacrificed to the gods. Some historians have even suggested that dismembered heads were used as balls in some ritualistic games. Wow.
Wow.
Go full governor here.
I know. Well, let's talk about lacrosse. So before lacrosse was a popular sport among prep schools in the mid-Atlantic and Northeast United States, Native Americans throughout North America played an ancient version of the game that traces back as far as 2,500 years ago. Back then, lacrosse wasn't played for fun, but rather was part of a religious ritual simulating war. The goal wasn't to have fun, but rather honor their gods and toughen up the young warriors. Games could go on for days and might include hundreds of players on each side. Their version of the game didn't include pads and helmets. In fact, the earliest players didn't have any protection at all. Rather than carrying a metal or graphite stick with nets, they ornately decorated sticks that were made out of wood and possibly deerskin. And I don't know if either of you are familiar with the TV show. It's on Netflix now, but it was called Hell on Wheels. It starred Anson Mount, and Common was in it. And one season of that show, actually, Kente and I used to do a podcast on this show. By far our most successful podcast. You know, we had like every writer, actor, everybody would come on the show. So it was a good time. But there was actually an episode, I think it was in maybe season 3 of the show, where they met this Native American chief, and they played like this game, which ended up resulting in the death of the Native American's chief's, I think it was his son or something like that.
Wow.
But the way that they depicted it on the show, it's a pretty brutal, it's a pretty brutal thing. And, unfortunately, in this story, there was a little sore loser action going on, and they ended up like tying up the two main characters and trying to burn them alive.
Jesus.
But just actually watching, what they were doing in that, I was like that. Yeah, it's a real brutal thing. It'll definitely toughen you up, but it would probably toughen you up to the point of you'll be like, yeah, he's real good, but he's dead. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He's tough as a, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, it's brutal. So I think if you can like maybe go online, they might have these clips. But lacrosse was no joke, or at least that version wasn't.
I'll have to
Nice.
share that with my daughter who's in lacrosse. I'll be like, hey, this is what you're supposed to be doing.
Get her some bloodlust going.
You know,
Let's get
and
you
it's
a
funny because
scholarship.
I don't know if y'all familiar, but the Hall of Famer for the Cleveland Browns, Jim Brown. He was in like all the blaxploitation movies. He's like an activist and whatnot. I think he was actually at the White House with the day that Kanye showed up for that spectacle. He was there that day. But he's known as as the greatest lacrosse player that ever played in college. So
Really?
that's another interesting thing. Yeah, I was reading up on it, and they say that he was like the best. So that's a little sports fact on this Super Bowl Sunday.
Nice. Well, so chariot racing. Any film buff has seen the famous chariot race in the 1959 classic epic film Ben-Hur. Although the sport still remains alive today, really? The height of its popularity occurred between the ancient Greek and later the Roman era in which the film is set. For both the drivers and the horses, chariot racing could be particularly hazardous, frequently causing injury and death. However, it was one of the more popular spectator sports at the time. Victory often meant large winnings for those skilled and lucky enough to win the races. In fact, according to an estimate published in the historical magazine Latham's Quarterly, the highest paid athlete in history was an ancient Roman charioteer.
Charioteer, that's an interesting name.
Charioteer. I'm a charioteer. I'm the highest paid one ever.
I'm a highest paid charioteer.
So that's where we also see some of the history of this insane, in my opinion, amounts of money given to athletes. I mean, they're very talented, but still we start to see the history of actually getting paid for some of these dangerous things.
So it wasn't it's not just Americanized bullshit. It's been going on for a while.
Well, also on top of the fact of, maintenance, you might have to get different horses. You know what I'm saying? That was like a big deal. So
That's
I
true.
was
that would be an expensive
sport. You should have
sport.
expense accounts for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm signing my contract and I'm getting a gold chariot.
You've got to have that. I mean, from what I hear, having horses are very expensive.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, they are. My dad, bless his heart, has 4 daughters, and the youngest one ended up being involved with horses, of course, because she's super high maintenance. I love her to death, but she's definitely
One of them had to, though.
the youngest. It was
girls.
bound to happen by the odds of the numbers, but it's expensive. She's paying for it now, thankfully, and she's actually a very, very good barrel racer. So
Awesome.
she works very hard in her job to literally pay for her barrel racing. That's all she cares about.
Wow.
And her new husband just got married. So anyway, let's move on to wrestling. For what might be the oldest combat sport ever played, dating back as early as the 13th century BC, wrestling may seem like a fairly tame entry compared to the other sports on this list. However, consider this. For much of its history, wrestling was an event in which participants were entirely nude. Oh, boy. I'm getting the barrel chicka barrel and the music playing in the back.
And people have joked about it being homoerotic now. There you go.
Oh, yeah. Those locks, falls, and pins hurt a lot more without any clothes. Ow. I'm not even a dude, and I'm like clenching my legs together. Damn. On a more serious note.
Leg lock with your nuts stuck inside. No thanks.
Oh, Christy, didn't you make a ladies' man reference earlier talking about the fish sandwich?
Yes, the
and
fish
it's
sandwich.
So funny. I'm thinking like Greco-Roman wrestling. I'm thinking about that other part of it.
Yes.
with
Can I
Will
buy
Ferrell.
you a fifth sandwich? And then the magic hath been done on those curtains and on that bed. Yeah, I love ladies' man. He's my favorite. On a more serious note, early forms of wrestling did not always include what is traditionally understood as Greco-Roman wrestling. One variant, a martial art known as pancration, involves a combination of boxing and wrestling techniques. Ooh, naked? Ow. This form of combat did not have any of the same rules as traditional wrestling and could result in serious injury for participants. I would think so. They
Shit.
probably got all their procreation out before they were in these meets because they weren't going to be procreating afterwards. I'll tell you that.
They're blue balls only because they're black and blue balls.
Exactly.
Well, let's talk about jousting. So, like many early sports, jousting is an actively derived from warfare. The medieval incarnation of this game involves 2 heavily armored knights riding at each other at full speed while aiming wooden lance at an opponent in order to knock him off his horse. Although jousting was a sport steeped in rules of pageantry, it was nonetheless dangerous for even the most well-protected participants. Injuries and even deaths were common. Have y'all ever watched like videos of people trying to simulate jousting?
Mm-hmm.
I can't definitely see a lot of these things where maybe the lance breaks, but it almost seems like if you hit someone in the chest, the lance always goes up. So I can see some splintering and like that thing going in someone's neck probably quite easily.
That just happened in Game of Thrones. I'm watching Game of Thrones, and they do.
Well, then it must be real.
Yes, everything's real in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I mean, or even if it doesn't break, even if the tip just slides up, it's kind of an odd thing. It definitely takes some heart.
Yeah, it does.
Just the tip, it's all it takes to mess up your life.
That's true. True story. Anyway. Yeah.
Well, on that note, fisherman's jousting.
What?
Fisherman's jousting is a sport that originated in ancient Near Egypt and is still played to this day. Here's how it works. 2 fishermen on small boats approach each other head on and try to knock each other from their vessels. Although preventing injury in this sport is easily achieved these days, in the time of pharaohs in ancient Egypt, most participants of the sport didn't actually know how to swim.
What?
This made drowning a common danger for any losers.
Well, this is on you. I mean, come on.
Dumbass.
I've
Learn
been
how to
training
swim
all these
before you
years,
get
and
out
one
there.
thing you didn't even learn how to
God,
swim.
that's just... That's bizarre. I don't think I would have played another sport if I didn't know how to swim.
Definitely the stakes.
Yeah.
Definitely win or die, apparently.
Yeah.
In my Cersei Lannister voice.
Well, now we're moving on to a little more, football in America, which I know is not exactly that, is tainted. So, in 1586, men from a ship commanded by an English explorer named John Davis went ashore to play a form of football with Inuit, the Eskimo people, in Greenland. There are later accounts of an Inuit game played on ice called Aquastuk. Anyway, sorry, y'all.
We'll go with that.
Sorry, Greenland people. Each match began with 2 teams facing each other in parallel lines before attempting to kick the ball through each other's team's line and then at a goal. Well, this sounds awfully familiar. In 1610, William Strachey, an English colonist at Jamestown, Virginia, recorded a game played by Native Americans called, Pasha Shaman. Fuck, I can't. I'm still half asleep
I knew you were
here.
going to hate me for that one.
Like every other word I can't pronounce.
Yeah, some of these pronunciations are brutal. But although there are mentions of Native Americans playing games, modern American football has its origins in the traditional football games played in the cities, villages, and schools of Europe for many centuries before America was settled by Europeans. Early games appear to have had much in common with the traditional mob football played in England. The games remained largely unorganized until the 19th century, when intramural games of football began to be played on college campuses. Each school played its own variety of football. Princeton universities played a game called Boulogne as early as 1820. A Harvard tradition known as Bloody Monday began in 1827, which consisted of a mass ball game between the freshman and sophomore classes. In 1860, both the town police and the college authorities agreed the Bloody Monday had to go. The Harvard students responded by going in the morning for a mock figure called the Football Fightum, for whom they conducted funeral rites. The authorities held firm, and it was a dozen years before football was once again played at Harvard. Dartmouth played its own version called Old Division football, the rules of which were first published in 1871, though the game dates back to at least the 1830s. All of these games and others shared certain commonalities. They remain largely mob-style games with huge numbers of players attempting to advance the ball into a goal area, often by any means necessary. Rules were simple. Violence and injuries were common. The violence of these mob-style games led to widespread protests and a decision to abandon them. Yale, under pressure from the city of New Haven, banned the play of all forms of football in 1860. From 1954 to 1982, a mob football was once again played at Yale University in the form of bladder ball, in which the object was to gain control of an oversized inflatable ball and bring it through the gates of the residential college represented by a team, before being banned by the school authorities due to the alcohol-fueled violence, which was often precipitated by the game. I mean, that's a common theme that's always going to follow sports.
Absolutely, including till today. I'm drinking and I'm not even playing. Wow. Anyway.
You know what? When you talk about alcohol in sports, there was a Washington Redskins running back. His name was Clinton Portis. He actually did an interview during the Super Bowl week, and he was talking about how he would take shots of Hennessy before he would go out and play the game. So, yeah. So some
it wasn't
people
Cavothier?
thing.
Sorry, I'm going to continue the ladies' man throughout this whole show now. I'm committed.
The ladies' man episode.
Yeah.
So the move towards modernization and innovation, I cut out a lot of stuff because as a non-football fan, actually, some of it was fucktardy and boring. But this part, as a result of the 1905 and 1906 reforms, mass formation plays became illegal and forward passes legal. Bradbury Robinson, playing for visionary coach Eddie Cockham, sorry if you're a fan, I don't know who that is, at St. Louis University, threw the first pass in a September 5th, 1906 game against Carroll College at Waukesha. Other important changes formally adopted in 1910 were the requirements that at least 7 offensive players be in the line of scrimmage at the time of the snap, that there be no pushing or pulling, and that interlocking interface, arms interlocked or hands on belts and uniforms, was not allowed. These changes greatly reduced the potential for collision injuries. The bloodlust went down.
Oh, boo.
Several coaches emerged who took advantage of these sweeping changes. Amos Alonzo Stagg introduced such innovations as the huddle, the tackling dummy, and the pre-snap shift. Jesus. Other coaches, such as Pop Warner and somebody else, introduced...
It's a Newt Rock.
Sure.
I actually know him.
I figured most people would. I should have just left this to you guys to read. Introduce new strategies that still remain part of the game. So there you have it, your somewhat classist, somewhat elitist sports history, lots of blood, lots of guts, a little bit of Hennessy before each game, and we're good for Super Bowl Sunday.
I say we reinstate the old rules of football and let the guys tear each other apart while we run the country. I mean, come on.
I like it.
That's perfect. Awesome. Wow.
They're happy. We're happy. Everybody's happy.
Got our edumacation on.
Yeah. See, and don't say we didn't teach you anything.
That was awesome.
And Miss Christy, what's going on with the next episode?
Oh, I read this story. A couple of days ago, and it just totally rocked my world. So I was like, okay, this has to be an episode on the show. The first ever recorded serial killer in history of literally the planet was recorded in ancient Rome. It was a woman, surprisingly. Her name was Locusta, and she killed thousands of people by poison, and her punishment was being raped to death by a wild animal. I've read the story, and I've read it on, and I'm not going to reveal what the wild animal is until we were on the show. Jeez. It will surprise you what the wild animal was, and her story is insane. Like, I've been reading several different articles and books on it because it's fascinating to me. Literally, just she was at the right place at the right time until she wasn't, and then she got hers at the end. So we're going to tell that story next week.
I think it's really interesting. I mean, they talk about female serial killers being such a rare occurrence. And of course, the term serial killers didn't actually exist until like the 50s or so after Black Dahlia. But, they came out with, this has been like 10, 15 years now, but Charlize Theron's Monster about Eileen Wuornos. And they're like, so rare, female serial killer. But, they kind of showed her as a sympathetic character that had, obviously had been raped and traumatized by some of the people that she killed. And it's just funny because I'm thinking if someone killed thousands of people by poison, I'm not not sure all of those thousands had it coming to them in any sort of way.
Not at all. No.
She's just a sick puppy. I'm not saying anybody should be raped to death by a wild animal, but if someone deserved to be killed for her crimes, it sounds like she was on that list.
She was a hardcore psychopath. She loved every second of what she did. She was never set up or raped or traumatized, as far as I can tell in her history. It's, this was a long time ago, so we don't know the actual 100% facts by all this, but she was a stone cold bitch. And so she was literally, that was her job, was to kill people until the wrong people lost power and she got her shit handed to her. Hate when that happens. But the road to her journey and her job is fascinating. And even when it wasn't a job anymore, she just kept doing it. And so it's an interesting way she got started, and a little bit of history will be thrown at us again, but also sometimes, again, truth is stranger than fiction. So we will figure out what animal raped her to death. I mean, I was like, say what? Reason, yeah, I was like, whoa, wow, that's crazy. What's crazy? And then
social media.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So we did our overall show social media, but where can we find you, Yardley?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at militant_marker.
And Miss Christy?
I am on Instagram at creepinatchristy. And then doing the Twitter page, I have a hard time doing all of them at the same time, so I kind of bounce around. I try to do my best, but I'm a little busy. Our Creepin' It page is at creepin_it, and I just would very much like to thank our listeners. By the time this show airs, we will have hit 70,000 downloads.
Like
70 whole downloads.
Wow.
70,000 downloads. And that is, I never dreamed. I thought this was just going to be a fun little hobby. Never in a million years thought that we would get this to this point so quickly. And very grateful. And as many as y'all listen, it just motivates us to do better and get better and find even more cooler things to talk about. So thank you.
Very much so. I've been having a lot of fun with our listeners over on our Facebook page. So thank you for the interaction as well as the support, everybody. You can find me. I'm causing a lot of trouble over on Twitter these days at Rebel Moni, Mony, and Instagram at Moni Bear. And we hope to see you there.
Keep it real.
Is that a literal mic drop over there?
It was. I was like, oh, I have to turn.